English in Quito, Ecuador. I am Estefania Bravo, and this is From the South. A group of Venezuelan migrants will return home from Quito, Ecuador on Wednesday evening. So far, 185 people have returned from Brazil and 89 from Peru. More Venezuelans are expected to return thanks to the Return to the Homeland program. Another plane is expected to arrive in Caracas from Peru on Saturday and from Argentina on Monday.
I'm happy to go back to my country because it didn't go that well for us here. And I need my house and my country to be okay.
I am very happy to go back to Venezuela, to my country, to my house, with my family. It really is indescribable, the stories that you hear here, and the support of the Venezuelan embassy, and the people from Ecuador. I am very grateful. This is a unique opportunity. I have learned a lot. I left my country because of bad influence, but I have learned now.
And the 90 Venezuelans in Quito are awaiting their flight as we speak. Our correspondent Denise Herrera is at the Mariscal Sucre International Airport, and we go live with her now. Hi Denise, can you tell us what's been happening today?
Hello, Estefania. Yes, we are now at the Mariscal Sucre Airport. Around 90 citizens of Venezuela will leave Ecuador today as part of the Venezuelan government's Return Homeland plan. The decision was taken after several allegations of xenophobia and discrimination made public in Peru, after Bolivia, Brazil, Argentina, now here in Ecuador. The citizens are sharing their testimonies of xenophobia and labor exploitation. So now I'm really happy to come back to the country, to Venezuela, finally.
Now, Denise, you've been at the airport for a couple of hours now. What kind of conversations have you been having with Venezuelans there, and why are they leaving?
Yes, we are here, and they say they are very happy to leave Ecuador because they also miss their family, and it was very difficult to find jobs here. So this kind of situation make that people decided to return to the country, and also they are very grateful with President Nicolás Maduro. They also are very happy to finally back to their country.
Denise, one last question for you. What awaits them at home tonight?
Of course. Now they are leaving Ecuador. It is expected the plane will leave Ecuador at 6 p.m. They are also very happy for that. And for what else we know, probably the Venezuelan government are receiving them in Venezuela, and they also are part of this return to homeland plan. They are really careful. They will be very careful about with these people and just continue with their lives.
Denise, thank you so much for your information. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. More stories now, and as we heard from Denise there, the Venezuelan embassy in Ecuador will create a special commission to assist migrants in applying for the Return to the Homeland program. The commission will also help their citizens deal with attacks against them. A group of 90 Venezuelans are due to return to Caracas this evening.
We are confident that 70 to 80% of the migrants are going to return, as the economy will recover. Anyways, we want to denounce an international campaign aimed at presenting migration as a humanitarian crisis. A humanitarian crisis means war, general famine, or persecution. That is not the situation in Venezuela. Venezuela is dealing with an economic war. We're suffering attacks against our economy. We also want to denounce the xenophobia promoted against our migrants.
Venezuelan migrants in Ecuador have criticized the xenophobia and their poor living conditions. Many are ready to return home.
A makeshift camp to the north of Quito currently houses nearly 50 Venezuelan migrants. This number varies, and many of those here wish to return home. They can't find work and living conditions are poor. The idea of a better life for them outside of Venezuela, an idea sold by the mainstream media, has turned out to be a lie for many.
This is why we have decided to return home, to fight and move forward in Venezuela.
Their situation becomes more complicated when there are children involved. Eneida arrived at this camp 10 days ago. She traveled with her 5-year-old daughter, leaving the rest of her children back in Venezuela.
I have children back home. I can't stay here in these conditions. I brought my little girl because she's the youngest, but having her here is too difficult.
Sadly, xenophobia is a real issue in a country that's supposed to have its doors open for migrants.
There's a constant media bombardment against migrants, which paints Venezuelans as people who are coming to take something away from Ecuadorians.
Ecuadorian society has started to react to the false idea that unemployment, poverty, and other social ills are caused by Venezuelan migrants. And yet, intolerance is being fought by Ecuadorians who recognize xenophobia.
We are defending the freedom of mobility for all people. We are all related, regardless of where we come from.
As many start to defend the rights of Venezuelans to freely move through the country, many of the migrants are ready to return home. In the next few hours, a plane will arrive in Quito to repatriate nearly 100 Venezuelans as part of President Nicolás Maduro's return to the homeland plan.
And dozens of migrants have lined up outside the Venezuelan embassy in Peru to apply for the return to the homeland program. Our correspondent in Lima, Jaime Herrera, has more.
People keep lining up outside the Venezuelan embassy headquarters in Lima. These Venezuelan migrants want to apply for the Return to Your Homeland program. They have different reasons to get back home. For instance, many say they have suffered xenophobia, poor work conditions. They've even been victims of human trafficking. Now they need to do an interview in order to be selected for the different flights organized by the Venezuelan government. Meanwhile, more and more people continue to arrive here to apply.
Thank you, Jaime, for your report. And the Organization of American States is holding an extraordinary meeting to discuss Venezuela. Venezuela says this is just the latest attempt at intervening in the country's affairs. Representatives from the International Organization for Migration and the UN High Commissioner for Refugees are also expected to meet. Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza will speak at the UN Human Rights Committee on September 11th. Arreaza will appear at the UN as it is said the Lima Group is pushing for a resolution to be passed against the Venezuelan government. The foreign minister could also meet the new High Commissioner for Human Rights, Michelle Bachelet. And Guatemala has banned the head of the Commission Against Impunity, Ivan Velázquez, from entering the country. President Jimmy Morales expelled the UN mission over the weekend. According to Morales, the head of the commission is, quote, a threat to national security. The decision to expel the Commission Against Impunity has sparked protests. Social organizations have criticized the president for trying to derail the corruption investigation involving him. The ELN has freed 3 soldiers in an attempt to restart peace talks with Colombia's new government. The 3 soldiers were detained by the ELN in early August. On Tuesday, the insurgent group announced that it would release the detained in an effort to resume peace talks with the government. And Paraguay has announced it will move its embassy back to Tel Aviv from Jerusalem. Paraguay's Foreign Affairs Minister made the announcement a little more than 3 months after the embassy was transferred to Jerusalem. Paraguay's new president, Mario Abdo Benitez, took the decision, citing his desire to contribute to peace in the region.
Paraguay wants to contribute to the intensification of regional and international diplomatic efforts in order to achieve a wide, fair, and lasting peace in the Middle East.
And soon after the announcement, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu ordered the closure of Israel's embassy in Paraguay. A statement from his office said on Twitter that Israel views with utmost gravity the extraordinary decision by Paraguay, which would cloud bilateral relations. Our correspondent in Paraguay, Osvaldo Sayas, has more.
The Minister of Foreign Affairs of President Mario Abdo Benitez's government has announced that the Paraguayan embassy in Israel will return to Tel Aviv. This after the government of his predecessor Horacio Cartes moved the Paraguayan embassy in Israel to the city of Jerusalem, a territory in dispute. Castiglione affirms that in this way Paraguay returns to a position of respect for international relations, since the United Nations recommends not to move embassies in a unilateral way in the city of Jerusalem. In 2017, Cartes's decision unleashed a series of criticisms. Above all, the need to respect the rights of Palestinian people to live in peace on their lands, and a need for condemnation of Israeli aggression against Palestine.
Thank you for your report. And a military airplane belonging to the U.S. will be tested in Ecuador. Ecuador's Vice Minister of Defense, Diego Gomez, has announced the tests will start on Thursday. Gomez says the operation will increase the coordination of both countries in the fight against crime, but critics say Ecuador is giving up its sovereignty. We'll be back very soon. Stay with us.
With developing events being presented through analysis. Our coverage transcends borders. With renowned journalist Walter Martinez.
Salud amigos, tripulantes de nuestra querida, contaminada y única nave espacial.
Dossier. Weekdays. Only on Telesur.
Y ponga usted las cámaras, señor director.
Welcome back. State workers have been demonstrating in Argentina's capital, Buenos Aires, in support of those fired from state news agency Telam. Our correspondent in Argentina, Edgardo Estevas, has the details.
The state workers are supporting the people who were fired from the state news agency, Telam. The press unions are also mobilizing in Buenos Aires to bring awareness to the difficult situation that those fired are suffering. 357 workers were dismissed more than 2 months ago, meaning 40% of the agency's collaborators. There are still no answers from the government of Mauricio Macri. Demonstrators are asking the Federal Secretary of Public Media to respond. 5 people have been reincorporated, but they want to negotiate others to have the same opportunity. People reach the headquarters building of Telam, and they will continue with their struggle until they receive answers from the authorities.
Thank you, Edgardo, for your report. And hundreds of Argentinians have also protested against the government decision to cut the budget for the health ministry. Health workers, union members, and political and social organization members protested outside the health ministry in Buenos Aires as part of the ongoing austerity push. The government closed down 11 ministries and cut spending on public policies.
We are here demanding that the Argentine government gives us back the Ministry of Health. People who are suffering from chronic diseases can't live without a ministry. People with HIV, we need to have the guarantee of having antiretroviral in the country.
It's a very big change implemented by the government in the health sector. The lack of guarantees from the state on public health, a 25% cut in the personal budget, and also of all the essential services.
And Argentina's peso has gained more than 1% and financial stocks surged on Wednesday. This comes just after government officials were in Washington seeking emergency funding to stem the economic crisis. Argentinian Finance Minister Nicolás Dujovne met the head of the IMF, Christine Lagarde, in Washington on Tuesday. They were expected to talk about new conditions for the fund to speed up payments on a $50 billion deal. But Dujovne didn't provide many details, but said they are hoping for an improved bailout loan in the second half of September. President Mauricio Macri has been accused of abuse of power over the agreement he signed with the IMF. Macri and his ministers are accused of violating the Constitution by not seeking congressional approval for the loan. The state prosecutor presented the case in court and said that it is now up to the judiciary to rule if it will suspend the IMF agreement. The purchasing power of retirees in Argentina has dropped 30% since Macri took office in 2015. A report from the National University of Avellaneda found the austerity measures and the currency devaluation could be responsible. Retirees are now earning around $150, close to what they earned during the economic crisis of 2001. The public prosecutor of Sao Paulo has accused vice presidential candidate Fernando Haddad of corruption. He is accused of bribery while being mayor of Sao Paulo, but Haddad has denied any wrongdoing. The Workers' Party says this is part of a political persecution campaign against their candidates. And the national dialogue is underway in Honduras to resolve last year's controversial presidential election. The talks are beginning after 9 months of failed attempts. A United Nations representative says each side is equipped with delegates committed to international mediation, and each committee is expected to present solutions at the end of the dialogue period. Students at the National Autonomous University of Mexico are striking after violent groups attacked them on Monday. 2 people were seriously injured during a peaceful demonstration. Students are demanding the university ensures their safety on campus. So far, 18 members belonging to these groups have been expelled from the university. The demonstrations are happening as the 50th anniversary of the Tlatelolco student massacre approaches. On October 1968, a student demonstration was violently suppressed, leaving around 400 people dead. Over 1,300 protesters were arrested. And meanwhile, Guyana's teacher strike moves into its 3rd day. Since Monday, students have been turned away as teachers failed to show up for classes. Teachers again gathered in front of the Education Ministry to continue protest action. They're asking for a 40% wage increase, which the government says it is too expensive to pay. Bolivian President Evo Morales has blamed Chile for unilaterally suspending a meeting to discuss the marine border issue. Morales expressed his disappointment over the cancellation of the meeting, which was agreed to by both sides. Bolivia had asked to negotiate sovereign access to the Pacific Ocean for generations. Both countries have been fighting over the border. In 2013, landlocked Bolivia filed a case at the International Court of Justice, demanding that Chile grant access to the ocean.
Chile, unfortunately, has a policy of delay. These meetings were planned ahead from both the sides. Why so many commitments? Why there have been so many offers and even OAS resolutions for Bolivia to get a sovereign corridor to the Pacific Ocean? They make us believe and then suspend any treaty that needs to continue and have results. This suspension of the meeting has surprised me.
And Bolivia will have a new universal healthcare system by 2019. This new system will provide free medical care for every citizen. The National Treasury will fund the insurance plan. This initiative comes after an extensive debate with social movements, institutions, and health sectors. And almost 2 years after the signing of a peace accord between the Colombian government and the FARC, Cuba has pledged 1,000 medical scholarships to underprivileged Colombians, including former FARC members.
A second group of medical scholarship beneficiaries were seen off Tuesday by several officials, including FARC President Rodrigo Londoño, to fulfill an offer from the Cuban government, which was initially made during the Colombian peace talks.
It is a gesture for the construction of peace in Colombia. The Cuban government granted young Colombians 1,000 scholarships, 500 for the FARC and 500 for the government. We are now sending off the second contingent of 147 to join the 186 who are already there.
According to the Cuban embassy, the scholarships are granted to former combatants and any Colombian young person from deprived backgrounds.
The students come from different social backgrounds. There are 22 former combatants, 13 indigenous people, Afro-Colombian students, young people from social movements, young people coming from zones affected by conflict, children of former military officials, and a former police officer.
For Haiti, a former FARC combatant for 17 years and a victim of the armed conflict as a child, studying medicine is not only a personal achievement, but also a step forward for the Colombian people.
I like like the social work. I am going to study medicine because there is a big health problem in Colombia. The FARC has the same objective of working for society. We are going to study not for personal gain, but to come back to Colombia and say, come here. There are a lot of people here who need health care.
Mauricio, one of the victims of the armed conflict, says the peace accord enables the building of a new country and calls on President Duque to support the peace process.
I represent the Colombian countryside, where the state comes with glyphosate. I prefer this peace process that saves lives and enables us to be physicians, to help people. President Duque, peace is not made with glyphosate, but by protecting lives, this is what the peace process means.
Next Friday, family members of former military officials, a police officer, along with others, will travel to Cuba to fulfill their dreams of becoming doctors.
We'll be back very soon. Stay right here.
We are present at every event where our nations are staring. We believe in a new global vision, united in every broadcasting. We keep expanding our horizons and working on a closer and better communication. Now, in Grenada, Telesur, the news source from South America and the Caribbean.
Our actions have an impact on the environment. It's our responsibility to change for the sake of our planet. Let's be part of this transition. Watch, preserve, and protect your Green Zone. Wednesdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. A powerful magnitude 7 earthquake has struck Japan. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, the earthquake hit 112 kilometers southeast of Sapporo at a depth of 66 kilometers. It confirmed that the offshore earthquake has not caused a tsunami. At least 3 firefighters have been killed while trying to contain a deadly fire in Johannesburg, South Africa. 1 firefighter fell into the blaze while trying to save others. 13 people have also been seriously injured and taken to a hospital. The fire broke out on the 23rd floor at the health department building. What caused the blaze is not yet known.
But I think I just want to give our deepest condolences. This is one of the most devastating things that ever happens in a city where we lose our firefighters or police officers. But EMS is out here in full force, together with our colleagues from the Gauteng department and also the paramedics from the private rescue institutes.
And the China-Africa Cooperation Summit has concluded, and many African leaders praised the outcome. We've talked to a Kenyan development economist who gave us a global perspective with an African lens on the biggest takeaways from the summit.
I think the first takeaway was that China made it clear it's going to monitor deals that it makes with Africa a lot closer. I think there have been questions by economists in Africa around the economic viability of some of the projects that our governments are getting into with China. And I think Xi Jinping made it clear that we're going to start monitoring these debts a bit more, which is very interesting because one of the things that African governments really liked about China is that they weren't monitoring. They really liked the fact that the deals were very opaque and that they could get away with a lot in those deals. So the fact that China is now saying we're going to monitor a bit more, I think will be will cause some unease in African capitals, but I think African citizens are going to be very happy with that. And I think the second big thing is that some debt will be forgiven. We'll see the scale of the debt. We'll see which countries will qualify for that debt forgiveness.
And now let's have a look at some other stories making headlines from around the world.
150 people were held at Perpignan airport in the south of France after flying in from Oran, Algeria. There were fears a child on board was suffering from cholera. According to Algerian health authorities, there have been more than 60 confirmed cases of cholera this month. Hundreds of Syrian refugees made their way back to their homes from Lebanon on Tuesday. Busloads of people were taken to Homs, Damascus and Hama provinces. One passenger said that he's been away from his home for 7 to 8 years.
My name is Israel Safadi. I am returning to my country. I am very happy. I spent 6 years here and I'm very glad that I am coming back to my country again.
At least 3 protesters were killed in the city of Basra in Iraq as mourners attended the funeral of 26-year-old activist who was killed at a demonstration the day before. According to official reports, the violence broke out during the funeral as people threw stones at the Iraqi forces who responded with tear gas and live ammunition. Typhoon Jebi in Japan has killed 10 people. It's the most powerful storm the country has faced in decades. An airport company had to transport around 3,000 stranded travellers by boats due to flooding. It's not known when the airport will reopen. Some roads and train lines remain closed.
And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. These and other stories, as always, you can find them on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And also join us on social media, on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Thank you for watching.